Hello everyone, this is Nammernan, and today we will be doing a video talking about the games of MWP 7 Week 6. So, I will be doing a mid-season video in a bit, sometime this week, so I wanted to make sure I got this video out as early as possible. But unfortunately, due to me going for that, the usage stats for this tournament have not caught up to the conclusion of Week 6. So this is still the same stats from Week 5. I'm sure you'll recognize some of the win rates, Steel and Water, most notably having the exact same win rates they had before. And the total amount of games played is 80, rather than 96, which is what it should be after this week, since there are 16 games played every week. So, yeah. These stats are not updated, so which means that, even better, I'll be surprised at what types will do well in this week. So I'm going to go straight into the games instead of doing any sort of overview beforehand, because any overview or talk about metagame stuff I will talk about this week in the mid-season. Which, the mid-season was technically Week 4, I know, but I definitely was not able to oversee, or I made a mistake with my scheduling and wasn't able to get the video done in the way I wanted, so that was on me, that was my fault, but I will try to make it up to you guys by getting this video out this week, so don't worry, we will be doing that. Anyway, let's move on to the games. So our first game is going to be Atari 25 versus Dieu Amphibien. It's going to be a water versus ground matchup. Now water should have the advantage here, and ground doesn't really have a lot of ways to counteract it. Due to, especially since Atari has Ogerpon, which is like a very, very notable destroyer of ground. As after a sword stance, it can one-shot Clodsire even at full HP. As long as it has Power Whip, of course. If it doesn't have Power Whip, it still does a pretty decent amount of damage, but yeah, it's going to be a really rough game for Dieu Amphibien to win. He'd have to play around his Gliscor and Landorus really well. And he also doesn't have Excadrill, which could have been helpful, as Excadrill's raw power would have been able to overpower a lot of the mons that water has, but he doesn't have that either, so it's going to be a very, very rough game for him. Let's see how he plays it. Alright, so we lead with the Swampert. Or not the Swampert, we lead with the Landorus, and Landorus gets responded to with Swampert. Landorus swaps out, so that means it might be the Choice Scarf set. Rocks are put up on both sides, with Sand going up. Swampert knocks off Clodsire Black Sludge, that's already not good for Dieu Amphibien, as Swampert does get a critical hit Earthquake onto the Great Tusk. Great Tusk revealing leftovers though, so it is indeed a utility set, rather than Choice Scarf, which we've been seeing the most this tournament. But he does lack a Iron Tread, so that does make a little bit more sense. Alright, Walking Wake gets put in, Clodsire responds. He might not be able to lift to a KO Draco Meteor, but he does go for Recover anyway, and does recover fully. Flip Turn is used on Swampert, eliminating Great Tusk, and also eliminating Dieu Amphibien's ability to control hazards this game. But we do see the Walking Wake come out with the Gliscor to respond. Hydro Steam is revealed, and we'll do 75% to the Gliscor. Gliscor using Facade to do a little bit of chip to the Walking Wake. Protect is used, but it ends up not hitting anything, or protecting from anything, as Samara does start layering on those spikes. Dieu Amphibien trying to go for a cheesy free turn with his Gliscor, but unfortunately Tari calls it out and is able to knock out the Gliscor easily. Landorus comes in, spamming Earth Power. A critical hit landing on the Ogerpon, very crucial. That's actually a very huge pick, because now he doesn't have one of his best mons to sweep ground with, so it actually might be a bit tougher for Atari to win this. Get the heal block on Powdon, however, as Powdon is able to do a whopping 59% to Primarina. Primarina, not Liquid Voice, as you can see. We do see the Mamoswine Revenge Gale with Ice Shard. Still don't know its item for sure though. Alright, the Sacred Sword does come out, and based on him not using Ice Shard that turn, it can be confirmed that he was not indeed a choice item. But Landorus comes in again. He is outsped by Walking Wake, but crucially, Walking Wake does not manage to Oko the Landorus. But it seems like it may not matter, as actually, Samurott might not be Sword Stance. He might be a choice item instead. No, he is Sword Stance, alright. So there's a very good chance that Samurott does just, yeah. Cloudsire, it's actually going to be tough. Wait, who is faster? It will be Toxapex, but I'm not sure how this 1v1 will go. If I had to guess, I think Cloudsire probably loses the 1v1 since Toxapex already has the advantage in pure stats. But yeah. Or when I said pure stats, I meant pure PP, since it has 6 more uses of Recover, while Cloudsire has like very little uses of Recover left. But yeah, it's probably just gonna be a Texas stare down. Maybe Dieu Amphibien will get a crit Earthquake. It's not speed type. Toxapex is definitely faster. We're definitely gonna have to see who wins this stall board. It does seem like Cloudsire might be able to KO Toxapex first though, before it runs out of recovery uses. Especially since Toxapex has to keep constantly reapplying Infestation, as it's its only damage source. Cloudsire has 6 uses of Earthquake left. Otare has 5 uses of Recover left. Otare has to be careful, or, well, he can't really be careful, but he needs to be wary of the potential of a critical hit. If I recall, critical hit is 12.5% chance. By default, yeah, there's the crit. But thankfully it doesn't. Thankfully he wasn't at an HP where the crit would have killed. Dieu Amphibien using one of his few recovery uses left to heal his Cloudsire back to full. Tare at 1 recover HP now too, but Dieu Amphibien is out of Earthquakes. So it looks like this may be it. Yeah. And there you go. Unfortunately, Dieu Amphibien was not able to outstall the Toxapex. As I said before, it may have been possible if he actually, no, I think it didn't even come down to the recovers. He just wasn't able to break through Toxapex in time with the amount of Earthquakes he had. If he had, maybe if he had all of his Earthquakes still, he would have maybe been able to break through Toxapex, but it would have had to have been tough. I think he did use Earthquake before the stall war happened too, so every Earthquake he needed was crucial for sure. But yeah, very sad that did happen, because Dieu Amphibien almost managed to clutch out this win against Water, because that crit on Ogrepon, as I mentioned before, was really huge, but sadly it wasn't enough. Tari was still able to come out with the victory, but well played so far to Dieu Amphibien, even though he did, as he says himself, he did say he choked hard towards the end of the game, but it is absolutely fine. This is still a brutal matchup for Brown to win. The fact that he got this close was very well played by him, so but well played to both sides still. Well, let's move on to the next match, which will be the Caligula versus King Choco. we have a Dragon team with Raging Bolt and Garchomp versus a Steel team, pretty standard Steel team with Xiri and Goodra. Alright, let's see how this match goes. I think the Dragon team will have a little bit of an advantage here due to Garchomp and Raging Bolt having a very, very good neutral damage to a good portion of this team. Especially if Garchomp shuffles its spikes properly. It could do a lot of work against Steel, so let's see how this goes. We lead with Dragapult and Iron Treads. Iron Treads is immediately swapped out for Goodra. King Choco expecting a special Dragapult set, but he's surprised with the physical Dragapult instead. As the Dragon Darts get planked into Skarmory. Skarmory getting a free spike off by the force switch that Dragapult is forced to do. Draco Meteor blanking into Gholdengo. As King Choco offensively calls out the Caligula switch and goes into Iron Treads, getting a crucial KO onto the Xiri and Goodra. Garchomp is put in and puts up Stealth Rocks as Skarmory is swapped out with Iron Treads, possibly trying to go for the same play again. Sadly, it does not work out as Garchomp does use the Dragon Tail, but the Draco Meteor, Choice Scarf Archaludon coming out and one-shotting the Garchomp. We haven't seen that set in a little bit for this tour, but it has been seen quite a bit. The Choice Scarf Archaludon on Steel. It's usually on Steel, but I have seen it on Dragon 2, I believe. But yeah, Raging Bolt will KO the Xiri and Goodra. Which means Raging Bolt's Electric Stab is a bit more dangerous now, as Archaludon doesn't exactly want to try and come into a special attacker, even if it is a resisted hit. The Iron Treads getting a lot of mileage from King Choco here, actually knocking out 3 Mons, or only 2. It only knocked out 2, but it has been a massive threat so far in this game. The Hex comes out but does very little damage to Raging Bolt, as Raging Bolt does click the Draco Meteor onto Heatran, popping its balloon. Raging Bolt forced out and goes into Latias. He does get burned by the subsequent Lava Plume. Gholdengo comes out to take the Mist Ball, getting its special attack lowered in the process. Got special attack lowered again, but the Nasty Plot undoes any damage that the Mist Ball does to Gholdengo's special attack. Gholdengo using Recover, as Raging Bolt uses a Thunderbolt that does a measly 40% to the Gholdengo. Gholdengo trying to keep its HP up so it doesn't get put into Thunderclap range, but doesn't really need to worry about that, I don't think. Iron Treads coming in immediately, calling out the Earthquake, or calling out the Thunderbolts. And King Choco taking the victory with his powerful Iron Treads. I'm actually not sure what set this Iron Treads is. It might actually be Choice Band or something. Because it did one-shot Dragapult, and I think it isn't supposed to do that normally. I think it does like around like 80%. It doesn't do 88% unless it's like a really, really high roll. But yeah, regardless, the Iron Treads getting a lot of value this game. Actually posing a really big threat to a majority of Caligula's team. I actually thought Caligula would have the advantage here, but as it turns out, he is actually an offensive set on his Iron Treads, which I don't think we've seen that much. I think it's typically still like balloon utility, offensive utility, and it's not like full out offensive, especially with a Choice Band, like I believe it has, so definitely very interesting, but it is a well-built team, I will say, and this Iron Treads definitely did do its job really well, so that being said, let's move on to the next game. We have Rio Vidal versus RoyalReloaded. We have a fighting team with Scrafty against a pretty standard sand ground team. So yeah, there's not really much else to say about either team. Let's just take a look at how the match goes. The choice of Scrafty over Gallade is not super surprising, as some types do use very strong psychic types. So having an immunity rather than neutrality can be crucial at times, and it's not like Scrafty is exactly bad at taking special attacks either. It's just that most people do prefer Gallade, as it takes special attacks as like a whole a lot better than Scrafty does. But let's see how this goes. We lead with Urshifu into the Landorus. We have Vidal predicting the switch into Great Tusk. Well, not into Great Tusk, but it is definitely predicting a switch. But Great Tusk was not the switch that they were predicting, as RoyalReloaded knocks off Rio Vidal's Rocky Helmet. The Ice Spinner comes out and instantly gets rid of the Landorus, which could have been a huge threat to the fighting team with its powerful neutral damage. Great Tusk being put in on the side of RoyalReloaded, as Rio Vidal does keep staying in with his Great Tusk. Headlong Rush doing still a ton of damage to the opposition, as the eject button is triggered and Escadrille comes in. Scrafty is put in to take the Iron Head from Escadrille. Scrafty is now KO'd without having to do much in the game, but taking those hits may have been all Rio Vidal needed for his offensive pressure to be set up properly. As the Great Tusk is still spamming Headlong Rush onto RoyalReloaded's team. The Ice Spinner finishing off RoyalReloaded's own Great Tusk, as Excadrill comes in. No Sugar Berry on the Iron Hands, as it does get one hit KO'd. Sneasler coming in on the Choice Band prediction on the Escadrille, as that is its most common set. Sneasler being swapped out upon seeing the... But we do see a good call out by RoyalReloaded as it lands a Toxic onto the Great Tusk. Headlong Rush having 2 PP left, as Mamoswine does take it. Urshifu comes in on the predicted Ice Shard, as Hippowdon does come in and set up the sand. Sneasler coming back out to wall the Hippowdon, as it has nothing that it can hit it with. Close combat coming out onto the Clodsire. That takes very little damage from it. Swords Dance is used. Rio Vidal possibly looking for a sweep here, as Throat Chop is used. Throat Chop doing 50%, but that percent may be enough. Recover was used again. Rio Vidal perfectly calling it out and getting out another Swords Dance. But Escadrille can now come in and revenge kill, as Sneasler still hasn't popped its balloon, meaning its Unburden is still available. Urshifu comes out as a response, but now with Hippowdon KO'd and those sand turns slowly ticking down, RoyalReloaded is going to find it very hard to answer the Sneasler after this round of sand. A Headlong Rush coming out again and one hit KOing Excadrill, as Mamoswine comes in as a response. Mamoswine getting a Earthquake onto the Iron Valiant. The Iron Valiant able to survive. Vacuum Wave coming out, but unsuccessfully getting that KO. Toxic is used again, but Sneasler comes out again, and the Sword Stance will be used. Poison Jab is used to get the Unburdened proc, but now Sneasler is now susceptible to the Earthquake from Clodsire, as it does get KO'd. Clodsire still recovering its HP, but Great Tusk is able to freely click Headlong Rush and get that KO onto Clodsire. Will Mamoswine be able to clutch out this endgame? We shall see. Well, actually, no, it won't, because Iron Valiant will just outspeed it. And also, yeah, Urshifu can just resist Ice Shard as well and take it. So, yeah, unfortunately, this fighting team was very well equipped. Fighting still showing to be very solid, especially against a meta type like Ground, but the choice of Air Balloon on the Sneasler is proving to be very crucial, because if Rio Vidal had opted for a more... had Rio Vidal opted for a Choice Scarf set instead, on a Sneasler rather than on his Urshifu. I think his Urshifu was Choice Scarf, by the way. Yeah, it was Choice Scarf, but had he decided to not do Balloon on Sneasler, Sneasler would have been a lot less useful this game, as especially as it would have been easily walled by Hippowdon and forced out very easily, but instead it used Hippowdon as setup bait, and was able to use both Hippowdon and Clodsire as setup bait, and not just get easily checked by both mons. So the choice to be Balloon there was very crucial. I personally, when I use fighting, I typically don't use Balloon because I don't find its value that much more important than Sneasler's very, very vital speed tier, but as you can see, in certain situations, the Balloon set is definitely better, and this was one of those situations, so very good building by Rio Vidal, and well played as well. Let's move on to the next match. Scarfire versus Uta The Clown. We have a Roaring Moon Dragon team, very rare. Roaring Moon Dragon team with Latios as well, against Uta The Clown's fighting team with Gallade over Scrafty. Scrafty not doing much the last game, by the way. I forgot to mention that, but yeah. And we also did see a slightly rare Vacuum Wave as well last game from the Iron Valiant. Will this Iron Valiant have it? We shall find out. We shall also find out if his Iron Hands has Shukaberry or not, but we will see. Alright, here comes the lead Dragapult, as we see the Ice Spitter instantly come out from Uta The Clown's Urshifu. Scarfire instantly responding with their own Archaludon, who does Quick Body Press. The Flash Cannon coming out and doing a ton of damage. We are able to see the KO onto the Great Tusk. But Dragon crucially cannot get rid of those hazards, so we shall see how this goes. The Moonblast comes out. It does not look like they are going to try it and go for the close combat, which means that Uta The Clown is not the mix set on Iron Valiant, unless he is and he's just baiting. We see the Iron Hands come out, but get instantly responded to by the Archaludon. Archaludon now able to get Self-Rock up, and with the absence of Great Tusk, he's not able to spin those away. That critical hit potentially battering, I'm not sure for sure, but it does manage to get the KO onto the Archaludon. Great. Iron Hands now KO'd by, after knocking down 2 Mons on Scarfire's team. Will it be enough? We will see. The Psyshock crucially doing a ton of damage to Gallade. And that's the difference between Gallade and Scrafty. Scrafty would have taken 0 there, but Gallade took an incredible amount of damage from that Psyshock. Gallade now KO'd as the Latios is in the driver's seat. That's actually funny. That driver's seat came out immediately after I said that Latios is in the driver's seat, but yeah. It is KO'd. Latios is KO'd by the Urshifu U-turn, confirming that it is indeed Scarf. You see the Dragon Tail come out, but instantly drag out Sneasler, which means that Sneasler no longer can get access to its Unburden boost for the rest of the game. Dragon Tail doing nothing to Iron Valiant here, as Hisuian Goodra does recover its HP with leftovers. Heavy Slam coming through and knocking out the Iron Valiant. So you see Sneasler go for the close combat, but remember, it does not have its Unburden boost, and the GUI additionally making it slower so that Dragapult can have an easier time to KO it. Not that it needed it, because it was already fast, but yeah. So the Ice Spinner not able to KO the Dragapult, as Dragapult is able to one-hit KO Uta The Clown. And just like that. Yeah, and that actually may be a great example as to why Scrafty can sometimes be more useful than Gallade, because as a Gallade fan myself, I typically find Gallade to be a lot more useful in most situations, but in this situation specifically, Latios is one of those psychic special attackers that is just very dangerous. And Psyshock, crucially, while it's still a psychic move, does hit from the defense side, and Gallade is not very taking on the physical defense side at all. So the choice to use Psyshock there instead of Luster Purge as well, because usually Latios is to use Luster Purge, but Scarfire opted to use Psyshock instead as his primary stab, and that proved to be a very useful thing against this Gallade. Had it been Scrafty instead, Scrafty would have taken 0, and Scrafty still would have taken very little damage, or not very little, but still would have been able to take a Drinker Meteor or anything else from Latios. But fortunately, Uta The Clown went for the more popular Gallade option, and Scarfire was able to take advantage of that choice. So well played Scarfire for building that. Fortunately, we did not get to see Roryman do much besides click U-turn, but yeah, very interesting match for sure. Let's move on to the next one though, which will be Hami versus Xiri. Hami and Xiri both, and this week's Monotype or Monothreat type was Bug, so this is not a Monothreat game. This is indeed a regular game of Gen 9 Scarlet and Violet Monotype. And this is interesting, because this is the third time that we have seen a Fairy Mirror. This is insane, because I was not expecting a lot of Fairy Mirrors. I was expecting Fairy to be semi-popular in my initial thoughts on this game, or on this tour. But it took a little bit for people to start using Fairy. And now, it's being constantly paired up against itself. Like, this is literally the third game that this has happened. Because there have been mirrors this entire tour, but a mirror between this type specifically has happened way more times than I think I would ever expect normally. But yeah, that's enough about me talking about the craziness of the mirror happening a bunch. Let's talk about these teams. Xiri opting for a screen scene with Azumarill as their main scary win condition. And Hami opting for a different approach, using screens with Enamorous and Primarina, opting for the double water core instead of using something else instead. Or actually, no, they're both using the double water core. Actually, I somehow managed to miss that. But yeah, Hami is notably lacking Hatteran though, and Hatteran is one of the best mons on Fairy. So let's see if Enamorous is able to justify its position on the team. Again, I'm not sure if they were expecting the mirror. I don't think either of them were, but we'll see how this gets played. So, see the instant lead of Enamorous into Primarina. Primarina taking the Moonblast very easily, and Enamorous already KO'd by the Primarina. I think the Primarina may be Specs, because I don't think it's supposed to do that normally. So, see the light screen come out from the Klefki. Instantly we get into Azumarill. Azumarill instantly Thunderwave. Knockoff instantly used by Hami. A very crucial knockoff there, as the light clay removal will make it easier to deal with the rest of Xiri's team. Hami not caring about being paralyzed and opting to go straight for the sweep right off the bat. As we see a almost full reveal of Hami's set. We see the play rough. And now Xiri's own Azumarill comes out, and we see the play rough come through and KO Hami's Azumarill. Now Xiri is in the driver's seat, using Belly Drum and getting his Azumarill back up. Almost a repeat of what happened to Hami's Azumarill, but this time he does not get paralyzed stun, but for one turn. Hami is still crucially having his light play, so he's able to make use of these bonus turns, and there it is, the unfortunate stun, causing Xiri to potentially lose his Azumarill when they shouldn't have. yeah, that extra Aquajet turn could have been all they needed to remove Iron Valiant while staying alive. Fluttermane comes out. Is it able to tank? Yes, it is able to tank the opposing Fluttermane's Shadow Ball. Again. And yes, I think Fluttermane may just be able to... Yep, Fluttermane is able to sweep here. And yeah, just like that. The one paralysis stun was all it took to completely remove Xiri's ability to play the game. Now, even though Inumrus didn't do anything, Hemi was still in a better position for the entire game, as he broke through a decent chunk of Xiri's team using his Azumarill initially, and by taking advantage of his Klefki still haven't used screens yet, he was able to wear down Xiri's screens, crucially, by getting that very important knockoff at the beginning of the game, not allowing Xiri to be able to make use of all of their screen turns, which meant that Fluttermane was able to come in and sweep a lot easier towards the end game. So, yeah, well played to Hemi. And yeah, it's just crazy that this was a mirror of regular SV, but here we are. I think Fairy's win rate might actually be taking a dip because it keeps losing to it, so funnily enough. But yeah, let's move on to the next game. Here we have Chaitanya versus Plague. We have a fighting team from the side of Plague, very standard. And on the side of Chaitanya, we have a Milotic water team with Ogerpon and Walking Awake. Let's see how... So, this is not the first time we've seen Milotic, actually. The last time we saw Milotic, it did win its game, I believe. So, actually, we can just check and see if it actually did win. So, let's go to water. Yeah, the last time we saw it did win. So, let's go back here. So, yes. Chaitanya is... We will see how this Milotic does. I believe the last Milotic we saw was the flip turn set with Recover. And I believe it was basically like a weird, different version of Alamamoyo, with its access to flip turn and just general neutral bulk, and also access to recover, crucially. But let's see how it does on this team, because Milotic is kind of a strange mod to fit onto most water builds, but we'll see how it does this game. Fighting probably going to tear through this. It can very easily tear through this team, but I believe Chaitanya may be able to pivot around his main carries very well enough to wear down Fighting's Assault. So let's see how this goes. So the instant Milotic lead into the instant switcheroo from Plague's Sneasler, very crucially now crippling this Milotic. But it doesn't seem like the Milotic cares all too much, as keeps clicking Scald, trying to get those burns, but the Toxapex does come out. Toxapex tanking the Thunder Punch. Chaitanya's staying in on the Iron Hands, actually. Getting additional Infestation Chip, and now swapping back into Swampert. Very well played. Very nice call-out prediction. Flip Turn is used on the Great Tusk, doing a lot of damage to it, as Ogerpon comes in and one-hit KOs, or not one-hit KOs, but KOs the Great Tusk, able to prevent the application of rocks onto Chaitanya's team, and also getting rid of its one axis of removal, so his own rocks and potentially Toxic Spikes or Spikes are no longer able to get removed. But Gallade being a very big threat to Chaitanya's team, as it is able to do a ton of damage despite it being Assault Vest. But unfortunately, the Toxic will make it harder for Gallade to do its job this game. As we see the mixed Iron Veiling come out and do a good chunk of damage to the Swampert, as Samurott does come out to take the next close combat and is O-code as a result. Walking Away comes in a very decent position as Hydro Steam is used, but coming into the Urshifu, it does not as much damage as Chaitanya would like, as the close combat from Urshifu comes out, but Toxapex takes the hits very, very well. Here comes Gallade to try and pressure the Toxapex, but Gallade is slowly losing HP over time. Toxapex able to crucially stall for probably enough time for Toxic to tick down on Gallade's HP as much as possible. And I believe Plague does not have an H procedure, so Gallade is just going to be permanently at this HP. Gallade at 2% now. A Stealth Rock from Swampert could, and here comes the Swampert. A Stealth Rock from Swampert could completely remove Gallade from this game, but close combat able to KO the Swampert before it can get those rocks off. Here comes Ogerpon. Ogerpon getting the KO onto Gallade. And now Sneasler coming out. Sneasler looking like it might be the choice scarf. Actually, no. Actually, no. Sneasler is the choice scarf set, because as we remember, it did use Switcheroo at the beginning of the game. So, Thunder Punch comes out, and Toxapex gets the Toxic off on Iron Hands. Iron Hands now on the timer. Iron Valiant comes out, as Milotic comes out as well. A Thunderbolt coming in, because now Chaitanya does not have a electric immunity, but the critical hit on Ogerpon coming in very clutch, as Dire Claw is used by Sneasler, but Toxapex is put to sleep by the Dire Claw, and Sneasler pivots out into Urshifu Rapid Strike. Now Urshifu should be a Sword Stance set. Yep, there's the Sword Stance, as Toxapex is still taking its sweet time waking up. The 3-turn sleep, very crucially, going to potentially be detrimental. Toxapex is just able to tank that +4 close combat so easily and hazes those stat boosts away, as Iron Hands now comes back into the field. Slowly getting chipped down by Toxic as well. The Paralysis coming through could be potentially massive, as that is basically a pseudo-sleep, pseudo-freeze. Or it can be at times. The first Paralysis hit, but Iron Hands will be knocked out. Dire Claw no longer being able to do anything to the Sneasler, as Toxic does come through on the side of Chaitanya's Toxapex. Here comes the Surging Strikes, doing a decent amount of damage to the Toxapex. As Haze does come through, Chaitanya having to be careful though, because a bad Paralysis could potentially spell disaster. And there it is, there's the Paralysis, but Toxapex probably not having to worry that much due to the chip damage from Toxic basically preventing Urshifu from being able to do anything. And the Water Absorb, crucially, not allowing Urshifu to use Aqua Jet, even though I don't even think it has Aqua Jet. It may have had Aqua Jet, I'm not sure. But regardless, Chaitanya is able to clutch this end game, as Sneasler is not Jolly. And due to it not being Jolly, it will be slower than Walking Wake at max speed, as Sneasler is 339 without Jolly, and Walking Wake is 348. So, unfortunate unfortunate nature diff on the side of Plague, causing this to happen. But yep, that was the game. Very, very close game between two sides. Very, very big banger game for sure. But it did come down to a nature. Well, actually, no, because there could have been a robbery with Dire Claw. We literally saw Toxapex get put to sleep for 3 turns. So if there's a Dire Claw, there's a way. But Chaitanya was able to control this game very well with his usage of Toxapex and Ogerpon. Milotic also doing very well in this game as well, so add another win to its record. Milotic is a good mod on water, but it just has a very niche usage set, or it has a very niche pair of teams that, or a couple of teams that can be used on. But yeah, very well played to Chaitanya and played this game. But we shall see how the next game goes. As it is crumbs versus Fentropy. Fentropy looking at double bird steal, as crumbs is using a Zapdos Galar team with Articuno and Dragonite as well. So the Gliscor is definitely going to be carrying the burden of hazards on this team. It's likely going to use Stealth Rock as well, since I don't think we want another Froll 1 versus RoyalReloaded situation to happen again. So probably will have rocks so that there can be any chip damage done to the opposing flying teams. But the Articuno may be dead weight in this matchup, as Steel's special attacker has Steel Stab, so Articuno will crucially not be able to take those very well, but it does have 8 uses, so maybe Crumbs can play around that to his advantage. We'll see, we'll see. Tornadus lead into the Archaludon from Fentropy. Instant switch into Gliscor, triggering its Toxic Orb immediately. As the Stealth Rock comes out from both sides, yep, there it is. And Tornadus comes in, Heavy Duty Boots confirmed. Focus Blast coming out on the side of Crumbs, as Brave Bird is used by Fentropy. Fentropy now in a very bad spot with his Skarmory and is forced to swap out into Corviknight, who is able to take away 2 uses of Focus Blast from Tornadus, which is very big for the Steel team. Here comes the Corviknight starting to bulk up now, as Gliscor is unable to do anything to the bulk up Corviknight set. This bulk up Corviknight is looking very scary as time goes on, as the Dragonite is easily able to tank the +2, and the Dragonite is confirmed the fat set as it Dragon Tails the Corviknight out. Dragonite looking for an Earthquake, but it is unable to get it, as Skarmory stays in and gets the Roost off. Encore is used, removing another use of Roost from Skarmory's PP table, as Dragonite using this free turn to try and get another Dragon Tail off, but unsuccessfully missing. Or misses. It just missed. But Brave Bird is used again by the Corviknight, as Dragon Tail is used by Dragonite. Crumbs calling out the Thunder Wave by instantly going into Gliscor, but also trying to be wary of Hex as he switches out into Tornadus. Gliscor coming back out to take the Thunder Wave, but here comes the Hex, one hit KOing the Gliscor and removing the only ground immunity on the team. If Gholdengo has a Thunderbolt, this could be very bad. Yes, the knockoff not being enough for Galarian Zapdos to KO Gholdengo with. Gholdengo is looking incredibly scary here, as he keeps using Recover, Thunder Wave, and Hex to do a ton of damage. Hex doing a ton to Tornadus, and there it is. Gholdengo single-handedly destroying the entirety of Crumbs' team. And that is the benefit of Gholdengo using the Hex set, as Gliscor, typically being able to wall teams by itself, is unable to do so in front of Gholdengo, as due to it being toxic, it takes the 130 base power from Gholdengo's Hex, and with the Nasty Plot boosted as well, it just cannot tank anything. So Crumbs is unable to really have a way to deal with Gholdengo once it got set up. As once again, even with the fat Dragonites, it would just use Thunder Wave and then potentially KO it. So, and Dragonite can't use Thunder Wave against Gholdengo due to good as gold, so very unfortunate. But that is sometimes the way things go. Well played to Fentropy, and that is definitely a dangerous Gholdengo set. This is definitely one of Gholdengo's more dangerous games. So let's move on to the next match. havocknight versus Frol1. Frol opting for a fighting team with Scrafty. And havocknight looking to use a dark team. I think this is the first dark team we've seen this week, right? I think so, yeah. But dark coming out. No Greninja on this team, instead opting for Hoopa Unbound. And yeah, otherwise from that standard. So let's take a look at how this goes. Now typically fighting should win this matchup, but Hoopa Unbound is kind of a very dangerous special attacker. If he had a Gallade team, this would be a lot scarier or Hoopa Unbound would be a lot scarier. But due to him having Scrafty, it's actually a little bit easier. So let's see how this goes. Tinglu instantly coming in, and Iron Valiant not able to really do much. We see some switching, and Darkrai does use Dark Pulse, but it does very little damage to Iron Hands. As a knockoff comes out and removes Iron Hands' Assault Vest. Iron Hands one-hit KOing the Dragonite from full with close combat. As Hoopa comes in, and here comes Scrafty, but Scrafty is hit by the predicted Focus Blast from havocknight. But notice, havocknight is forced to use Focus Blast there because of the existence of Scrafty. But Psychic Noise now coming out on the side of Hoopa, removing Iron Hands from the game, as Urshifu comes in to avenge its friend. Iron Valiant now being swapped in on the Manipul's U-turn. As Masquerada comes out, will Masquerada be Choice Band? Seems that Masquerada might be Choice Band. I'm actually not sure about that damage. I think it's not. I think it's not Choice Band. I think that might be Choice Scarf damage. But yeah, Sneasler using Dire Claw managed to poison Mandibuzz, and the subsequent close combat does KO. Here comes the play rough again from Masquerada, KOing the Scrafty, and now he has no Psychic immunity, so Hoopa Unbound, if it gets a free turn, will be very dangerous, but I don't think Hoopa Unbound will be able to find that free turn, as the remaining mons on Frolun's team are far too scary for that to happen. And Sneasler's Unburden gets procced by the Sucker Punch, and with the +2, poses too big a threat to havocknight's team to be managed with. And as such, results in havocknight's forfeits and Frolun's victory. But yeah, as I said, havocknight, because of Scrafty, havocknight wasn't able to freely click a Psychic move against Frolun's team. Because even though Gallade would have taken the Psychic move pretty well, Hoopa could have been a knockoff instead. And if it was knockoff, and havocknight predicted that instead of using the Focus Blast Protect, which I don't think this mod had knockoff, but it could have. It is an option we have seen before, and if it did have it, Gallade would have been in a horrible, horrible spot. But because it was Scrafty instead, Scrafty takes very little from Hoopa Unbound's knockoff. So it actually would have been in a fine spot had it gotten knocked off. But instead it forces a risky Focus Blast, which fortunately for havocknight it did hit. But if it had not hit, it would have been a much harder spot. So Scrafty actually doing a lot here against this dark team, funnily enough, but it did do very well for what it needs to. Even if it didn't manage to grab any KOs or really click any moves, its presence actually did a lot for Frolun's team here, so that was very, very good. But yeah, let's move on to the next match. We have Z's versus ltranc. ltranc opting to use a Oricorio Wincon special electric team versus a very meta dragon team. Remember, when I said why electric isn't picked very much is because of teams like Z's. These scary electric resistant stab spamming dragon teams are very dangerous for Electric to deal with. But let's see if ltranc is able to beat all odds and actually use his team to achieve a victory. So here comes Choco, opting to use Clanging Scales right away, as we do see the light screen come out from Reggie like a Paying Kirchen coming in and setting up that crucial electric terrain that Oricorio needs to start being a threat. Choco still using its Clanging Scales, as we see Pork Drive activation on Iron Hands, opting to boost its attack and get Choco KO'd. Psychic Fangs destroying the screens and also KOing. Oh my god, also got crit too. But yes, we do see the Combine come in to the side of ltranc's Raging Bolt, but it misses the Draco Meteor, very unfortunate. Volt Switch is used as Oricorio Pom Pom is put in and the Electric Seed gets consumed. Quiver Dance is used, but Raging Bolt looking very scary on Z's team. Raging Bolt is used. Gudra very easily tanking ltranc's Draco Meteor from his Raging Bolt, as Gudra using Knockoff to remove the Heavy Boots from ltranc's. More Draco Meteor misses. Very sad Draco Meteor misses as well, as we see the Combine get used. Dragon Tail KOing the Roaring or Raging Bull. Rotom using the substitute immediately. It looks like it's going to be the Nasty Plot Stored Power set, as we do see the first Hydro Pump land successfully on Archaludon, but the defense boost from Stamina going to still prove to be very annoying for ltranc, as the subsequent Body Press becomes stronger and does get the KO. Will Oricorio Pom Pom be able to bring this game back, even without its defense boost? We see the Combine. Are we going to see a full dance war go off between Z's and ltranc? It may be. It may be. The issue with this dance war is Raging Bolt's stats are far superior to Oricorio's, so unless ltranc either gets a very strong hit or a critical hit, this is not going to look very good for him. So you see the Air Slashes come out. As the Thunderbolt, yeah, there's that powerful Thunderbolt coming in, as Roost is used. And the crit from Z's, all but securing this game against ltranc. As once again, Electric does fall to a Dragon team. Very sad, as we all want Electric to succeed in this tournament, especially after the infamous Iron Hands incident. But fortunately, Z's powerful Dragon team is just too much for Electric to deal with. Very unfortunate, but that is the way it is sometimes in Monotype, and that is the risk of bringing Electric as well. But yeah, valiant attempt from ltranc, but unfortunately we are unable to see that Electric victory that we all want to see. Let's move on to the next game, as it is LBN versus TWK. A water versus dark matchup, with dark LBN opting to use Alolan Muck, which is not a very common mon on Dark to see. We see an Alolan Muck team as well as Greninja. As on the side of TWK, we have Manaphy and Alomomola, along with Gastrodon as well, along with the other two usual suspects and Primarina. Very interesting team from TWK. I am very curious to see how it does. So let's stop waiting and find out. Now, LBN having the advantage here, I believe, due to Meowscarada just being an incredibly scary mon for Water to deal with, especially if it has Thunder Punch. as that bolt grass coverage will be problematic. Alomomola looking to get that Scald burn, but is unable. Amphibien fishing for the poison jab poisons, as it does manage to get it onto the Alomomola. Muck crucially getting rid of both Alomomola's heavy duty boots, I believe, and the poison constantly chipping Alomomola down. Here comes the sludge wave from Greninja onto Primarina, but Primarina fully heals due to Alomomola's HP stat being as huge as it is. Gastrodon getting those rocks off, that was not something it could always do before, as Samurott does miss the Ceaseless Edge onto Toxapex. Toxic is used by TWK, but to no avail on the Alola Muck, as Samurott is put in and Alomomola is swapped out as well. Ceaseless Edge coming down, getting a spike off onto the side of TWK as it starts wearing down Primarina. Alola Muck comes out to replace Hisuian Samurott, as Primarina opts to use Flip Turn on the Muck. Muck now resting to full HP. Is it Sleep Talk? We shall find out. It is indeed Sleep Talk and uses a knockoff on the Alomomola. We see a Scald used by TWK as Muck opts for another knockoff. Alomomola healing itself a ton of HP, as Muck now is at Wake Up Turn on its rest. Here comes the Dark Pulse Resist by Primarina. Primarina now fully healing to full HP. TWK managing his wishes very well this game, I would say, as Muck is once again borne down by Primarina's pressure, as rest is used again to fully heal Muck to its maximum HP. Tinglu comes out to answer the Samurott, as TWK is able to get a spike off on LBN2. Albion crucially lacking Mana Buzz to even potentially remove these hazards, so he will have to deal with these for the rest of the game. As TWK puts in Alomomola and Flip turns out, putting himself at a very dangerous HP, and with Alomomola no longer having those heavy duty boots, it will struggle to find opportunities to hit the field very often, as Manaphy is able to get a Scald Burn off on Tinglu. TWK opting... hitting the... it is able to get the substitute off, but unable to get off a crucial Tail Glow, which I believe is what this Manaphy has. Manaphy is able to come in again, but with 8% HP, it's going to struggle to find an opportunity to make use of its make use of the wish from Alomomola, especially with Alomomola as weakened as it is. Muck confirmed heavy duty boots. I think it's probably confirmed for a while, but I'm not noticing it. But Primarina is able to use Moonblast into a Flip Turn to greatly wear down Muck's HP, as Meowscarada now comes in to the Gastrodon. Gastrodon clicking the cover, but not safely, as it is now at risk. Meowscarada is Choice Scarf. It is not Choice Band, so that means that Water will have a much easier time dealing with it. And that reveal is going to allow TWK to make some very, very powerful decisions in the next couple of turns. Muck opts to go for the P-Jab instead of the rest, and it actually gets the poison, which crucially knocks out Hisuian Samurott on that turn, removing TWK's access to spikes for the rest of the game. Manaphy comes in and gets the burn on Darkrai onto Switch. Almost immediate justice. But the Ceaseless Edge on LBN's Hisuian Samurott will come out and put down an additional spike, as Toxapex goes for the Toxic, but it hits nothing, as Muck probably rests on this turn. Alomomola unable to come in due to poison knocking it out. Manaphy comes in and gets the Tail Glow off, but what will happen? Will Muck get the offensive move? It does get the offensive move and knocks out the Manaphy, as Gastrodon comes in to try and take advantage of the Buck, but it will do very little damage to the Meowscarada. Meowscarada is taking a ton of chip damage, as Toxapex with its heavy-duty boots comes in to the field, but now it loses its heavy-duty boots from Meowscarada. the toxic spikes coming through on the side of TWK. As we see a knockoff, but to no avail, as Gastrodon is able to use its sticky hold to its advantage. Does Gastrodon go for the offensive move? No, because of that toxic spike, crucially making it so that Yaskarata can't even get a turn off. Samurot's heavy boots protecting him from the hazards, but will it be enough to KO this Toxapex? Toxapex taking a ton of damage, and TWK opting to Toxic this the Hisuian Samurott. Hisuian Samurott taking a bit of chip, but will it be enough? Ceaseless Edge coming down again. Will TWK go for a very cheesy free recover here, or will he... No, instead we see the Greninja come out. Greninja most likely going to be Specs this game. Gastrodon coming into the extra sensory. Able to take it, but will it get flinched? If not get flinched, as it recovers its HP. Gastrodon has to be very careful because a bad flinch here could potentially end this game. Alright, still no flinch on the side of LBN, so TWK may be fine as he desperately tries to keep his Gastrodon at full HP. Toxapex is swapped out as the Greninja does KO itself. Muck comes in on the Gastrodon as Muck now using Earth Power, but is going to try and use its Poison Touch to get that poison off on Gastrodon. Now, I believe Sticky Hold does stop the bonus damage from a knockoff, but a roll will completely... A crucial 2% roll will knock out TWK's Gastrodon. But I believe Gastrodon probably had like very little PP left, yeah. So Buck is able to get that victory. A very close game indeed from both sides. It's well played to both players, but at the end, Dark was able to put up enough pressure. Muck getting a ton of rests off and making a great use of its HP bar the entire game. Muck was at 10% at one point of this game, and it was able to survive, and once again, wall. It's a wall, the opposition, and just provide a lot of offensive pressure. This is a very good showing from Muck this game. Definitely a very good showing. And proof that it is a viable mon on Dark, contrary to what many believe. But yes, we will now move on to the next match, which will be Twinkay versus Mind Gaming. We have two ground teams facing off against each other, and no, it's not ground threat, because as I said before, this is a bug mono threat week, so it is indeed a natural ground mirror. And this natural ground mirror features a Twinkay team with neither Great Tusk or Iron Treads, which is a very interesting choice, as Mind Gaming opts for a Great Tusk Sandless team, as opposed to Twinkay having a sand team with Excadrill. So we shall see which team wins. Will Sandless win, or will non-sand win? Or, okay, I just said Sandless twice, but will Sand win, or will Sandless win? We will see. Also, Mind Gaming having a Tinglu as opposed to Twinkay's lack of Tinglu. Alright, Mammothswine Mirror. As Mind Gaming opts for the Earthquake immediately, Hippowdon instantly jumping to Excadrill with its eject button. Iron Head is used by the Excadrill. Twinkay opting to stay in, potentially predicting the Stealth Rock from Great Tusk. As we see the instant switch into Landorus. Gravity actually being used, and Gravity crucially boosting Focus Blast accuracy, so it actually doesn't have to worry about missing it at all. Earth Power is used on the Gliscor switch very crucially, and will allow Twinkay to put down some very hard pressure on Mind Gaming's team. Mind Gaming putting in Tinglu to take a Earth Power from the Landorus, and trying to bait Landorus into trying to KO instead of going for another Gravity. Twinkay's Landorus doing a ton of damage to Mind Gaming's team. It doesn't opt for the Gravity this turn. Instead tries to go for the KO, trying to potentially predict it. As the Gravity does come through this time, and Focus Blast will connect onto the Tinglu. Tinglu getting off a few hazards before it gets knocked out. Twinkay getting knocked out by his own Gravity as the Mamoswine comes out. Ice Shard is used, and I believe that may be Choice Band damage, so... Oh, it's not Choice Band damage. It's actually normal damage, that's crazy. And the Mamoswine actually getting the KO on the Cloudsire. Wow, you're really telling me that's just... It's just able to do that naturally. Wow. Mamoswine's very strong Pokemon. As opposing Mamoswine does knock out the Cloudsire on the side of Twinkay. Mind Gaming losing his Gliscor, which is very bad for him, as Gliscor would have been very needed for defensive value of this game. But the Choice Scarf Landorus on the side of Mind Gaming is able to get the KO on Garchomp, as we see, again, the Mamoswine come in, but Twinkay predicting Mind Gaming's Mamoswine switch in, as Hippowdon comes in to take the other Mamoswine. Earthquake. Excadrill now coming in, going to look to spam Iron Head many times. A critical hit, one hit KOing the Landorus, as we see the Great Tusk take the Iron Head from Excadrill. Ice Shard is used, and now it is off to a Mamoswine mirror, whose Mamoswine will win, and it is Twinkay's, and Twinkay takes the victory. Very close match, but at the end of the game, the Sand Ground team came out on top, even in a mirror of Mamoswines. Is it shiny privilege? Who knows? But that will be the end of that game. Isn't really much to say about this game. It went by pretty standardly, not too many big surprises. It is interesting to see that there are, because before, the most common set on Great Tusk was definitely the Choice Scarf set, but now it seems to be that people are shifting to a different set of Leftovers and Lead, or Hazard Support Great Tusk. Because notice, neither team has Iron Treads, which is typically seen to be one of the better mons on ground. So it is interesting to see that and to see Great Tusk used over it. Especially, to see Great Tusk fulfilling its role. Or its former role. Iron Treads' role, that is. So, I don't know. We'll see how this goes as the tournament progresses. Alright, now we have RindaOkami versus Shiba. Rinda opting for a fighting team with Scrafty, and Shiba opting for a Manaphy Alomomola team. But yeah, we will see how this goes. He doesn't opt for Gashadon like the previous person that used Manaphy, so we will see how this goes. Fighting can potentially break through this team, but let's see how Shiba plays it. So knockoff instantly used and removes heavy duty boots from Swampert using a flip turn, but Great Tusk's speed increase may make it so that... Okay, never mind, the speed boost didn't matter, but Scald does come out on the side of Alomomola, not getting that burn that it probably wanted. Heavy duty boots now being removed, and Scrafty in a position to potentially use, Bulk Up, as the Wish goes through and fully heal Swampert. And now all of the progress that we thought was made is no longer made. But Scrafty is still in a good position here, as the one boost from Bulk Up is able to make it very scary. Scrafty still opting to use Drain Punch. Here comes a knockoff to remove Toxapex's heavy duty boots, as the Haze comes through and removes the Bulk Up boost. Rinda still opting to set up in the face of Toxapex, not feeling entirely scared due to Shed Skin being a thing that Scrafty has access to. another bulk up from inside of Scrafty. Shedskin still not proccing yet, but shouldn't be too big of a deal as RindaOkami can just opt to use Rest to get rid of this Toxic. Here comes that Rest, as we mentioned. The Haze coming through. Shedskin still not coming in. Shedskin still not coming in as well. Wow. RindaOkami not getting a Shedskin proc for a while. That's actually very unlucky. As Urshifu on Shiba's side does a ton to Rinda's Urshifu. Rinda's Urshifu doing a bit of damage to Toxapex, as it does end up getting Toxic. Here comes Scrafty, who is now status immune, and is able to come in on the Toxapex Toxic. Swapped out immediately for Great Tusk, but the Urshifu Rapid Strike coming in on the side of Shiba, but Shiba not wanting to deal with the Rocky Helmet chip from Great Tusk is opting to not use Surging Strikes, as the crit burn from Alomomola actually does a ton to Great Tusk. Scrafty coming in again to burn its sleep turns. Flip turn, once again healing Swampert. As Shedskin finally procs and recovers Scrafty from its sleep. Bulk Up is being used in front of Scrafty again, or not in front of Scrafty, in front of Swampert again. As we do see the Toxapex come out. Knockoff is used, but Toxapex is very easily able to wall Scrafty here, as Great Tusk gets put in. Toxapex opting to D-jab, but ends up getting hit by a Rocky Helmet proc. Great Tusk is able to remove the rocks, but at the cost of its life, as it goes down. Iron Hands now in position, as Toxapex opts to Toxic it as well. Iron Hands looking like a baby the Assault Vest set from the no usage of Sword Stance so far. And a critical Earthquake comes through, doing a bit of damage to Swampert, as Sneasler now comes in. Balloon opted for. The Sword Stance is used, but the Urshifu is Scarfed, and without the presence of Great Tusk and its Rocky Helmet, Shiba is able to click this without risk of taking a ton of retaliation damage. RindaOkami possibly bluffing a Choice Scarf Iron Valiant. And forcing out Shiba's Urshifu. As Iron Hands does take the Surging Strikes, but it will not be able to take another one, yeah, due to its low HP and low speed. Iron Valiant coming through. As the Thunderbolt does come through, Thunderbolt being very good because now Swampert is KO'd, so nothing can really take it very well, and it doesn't even have a neutrality like Ogerpon to take it either. Here comes the Tail Glow for Manaphy. A knockoff doing very little damage, as Drain Punch is used. The substitute here from Shiba, giving Scrafty a little bit of HP. As Scrafty is able to get the KO on Manaphy, but Urshifu now in position. Ooh. And the switch into Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant actually able to take the Surging Strikes. But Scrafty is swapped in as the Alomomola is brought out. Drain Punch being used to give Scrafty a little bit of HP. That Wish possibly going to... Oh, it is going to be used on the Alomomola as RindaOkami predicts this and goes for the Bulk Up. Another Bulk Up is used as the Wish comes through again. Toxapex coming in with its nearly full HP bar, which will not be full thanks to Alomomola's Wish. Knockoff is used, but again, the Haze prevents Scrafty from becoming a massive threat in the face of Toxapex. No Shedskin proc. Hopefully Rinda does not get unlucky with those procs again. Momoa comes out. It seems like Shiba is going to opt to just swap between Toxapex and Alomomola this entire time and just constantly heal through Regenerator. Scrafty's still not getting that Shedskin proc. Very, very annoying for RindaOkami. The Dire Claw coming through will put him to sleep now. We get nothing. Another Dire Claw. We get the Paralysis onto the Toxapex. Paralysis very crucially can swing this game. Yeah, as one pair goes through. Toxapex still has 4 uses of Recover left. Rinda actually opting to keep using Close Combat, because if Toxapex hazes, ooh, and that Paralysis. Dire Claw is used over the Close Combat as another use of, oh, another crucial Paralysis. Here comes Suian Samurai. Suian Samurai not able to take a +2 thing, as Unburden still not used on Sneasler, but now we'll never be able to use it as it is KO'd. It seems like the Iron Valiant may actually be Scarf as well, as it is getting those Thunder bolts off on the Alomomola. Will Scrafty finally shed its toxic poison? No, it will not. Here comes Urshifu, and Urshifu should be able to clean this game up. It will have to be forced out in front of the Iron Valiant, but Iron Valiant should be able to... oh! Instead Shiba opts to just letting it KO'd. And that may have been probably the better decision, as Iron Valiant doesn't really have a way to deal with Alomomola subsequent scalds, so yes. Very long, drawn-out game, but... okay, I say very long, but it's definitely not the longest. But it's definitely a drawn-out game, and both sides try to play to the best of their ability. Shiba does come out on top though, as he's able to control the game through his usage of Toxapex and Alomomola. And even though he lost his Swampert very early on, his mons were bulky enough that they weren't able to be greatly threatened by Iron Valiant's Choice Scarf Assault with its Thunderbolt. So this is a very well built team by Shiba. I'm not sure if he built it, but whoever built the team did a very good job. And well played to Shiba for piloting it very well against this fighting team. So let's move on to the next game, which is Sificon versus Kev. So Kev is opting for a Steel team with Suri and Gudra. Very likely going to be set up Havocknight as well. And Sificon is opting for a Roaring Moon Combo Latios Dragon team. Interesting. Let's see how this match goes. Alright, Arcaludon lead. Body press hits nothing as Golbeko swaps into it. Arcaludon brought out on the side of Kev, as Suian Gudra is brought in by Sificon. Arcaludon on Kev's side, missing its Draco Meteor. As we see a Thunder Wave come out from Sificon, but is blocked by Golbeko's Good as Gold. Kev putting in his own Arcaludon, but Suian Gudra on Sificon's side uses Protect to try and predict what Kev is going to do. Kev gets the Stealth Arc off, as I mentioned, but now it gets a Draco Meteor off on the Arcaludon switch. Sificon using his own Arcaludon to get that Stealth Rock off. but now his Archaludon is at very low HP. As we see the Gholdengo come out, Gholdengo probably not going to be able to take a hit for Roaringman, as Roaringman uses U-turn into the Archaludon. As Dragapult is a special set, as Kev feared, which makes it switch into U-turn good, even though Sificon does miss the Draco Meteor, which could be crucial. Here comes a knockoff from Goodra on Sificon's side, knocking off the leftovers of Kev's Archaludon. As Sificon's own Archaludon comes in, taking a Thunder Wave from Kev's Archaludon. But with that new speed control, Kev is able to KO the opposing Archaludon. Dragapult is put in to try and check the other Archaludon, as Heatran takes a whopping 46%. Heatran is swapped out for Gholdengo, as Latios is put into the field by Sificon. Sificon looking to use Thunderbolt, but the Make It Rain has come out on the side of Kev, doing a good chunk of damage to Latios. Latios getting a special defense drop on the Gholdengo with its Luster Purge, but falling in the process. Here comes Combo, as Heatran comes in as a response to it. Flash Fire blocking the Flamethrower, but subsequent Vacuum Wave is able to KO. And now Heatran is down, which means that Como could be a threat if it is Clanger Soul, but I'm not sure if it is. Gui being confirmed on the side of Sificon's Goodra, as Corviknight does have its speed lowered. Archaludon being put in, but is forced out by the presence of Dragapult, as Dragapult uses Draco Meteor yet again onto the Gholdengo. Gholdengo at very low HP now, as Roaringman does come in on the side of Sificon, and Kev puts in their Iron Treads. The balloon is popped, but yes, and Kev is able to get that rapid spin off and removes the rocks, which can no longer be put back on the field by Sificon. But yes, Kobo is able to get the KO on Gholdengo, so now he has no fighting immunity or fire immunity, so Kev may be in a rough spot here. But it looks like Sificon may be the one in the rough spot instead, as Kev is able to put Kobo at a very low HP. Close Combat is used to one-hit KO the Goodra though. But the Giri does put Kobo at a concerning speed tier, forcing it out in the presence of Archaludon. As Sificon's Gui now puts Archaludon. Sorry about that, something happened on my end, but let's move on. So yes, we just saw Sificon KO Kev's Goodra with Close Combat. Kev's Archaludon now taking a Gooey hit from Sificon, as Kev swaps out into Iron Treads, who takes a Dragon Tail from Sificon and brings the Archaludon back in. Kev able to get that KO onto Goodra, as we see Como come out. Como opts for the Close Combat, which does get the KO on Archaludon, and I believe that should be game unless Iron Treads. Nope, Iron Treads is not able to do anything because of the Vacuum Wave. And just like that, Sificon is able to get that W with the Como team. Como actually being very useful this game, because along with Heatran being KO'd early, it was just able to apply a ton of pressure through its presence of its Fighting Stab, and also just having access to Flamethrower and Vacuum Wave, making it harder for some of Kev's allies to deal with Como, especially when it gets a bit low HP. So well-built team by Sificon as a response to the commonness of Steel. Commonness and success of Steel, I may add, but yeah. Well done by both teams, as Kev did play this pretty well as well. So let's move on. Wincon-Z versus Clean is our next match. Wincon opting for a fighting team with Caligula of all mons. And Clean opting for another dark team with Alolan Muck and Fupa Unbound over Greninja. So once again, fighting does have the advantage here. Although Wincon does have Gallade instead of Scrafty, which could make this a bit hairy, but let's see how this goes. Iron Valiant immediately leads, as Gasparotto leads as well, forcing out the Iron Valiant. Triple Axle is used by Clean, but the Rocky Helmet will give a lot of chip to the Gasparotto, but it does nearly one-hit KO the Great Tusk, as Clean does not care and just wants to get rid of the Great Tusk as soon as possible, which is understandable, as it does have the hazards and the removal. That would make its Tinglu way less effective. The Iron Valiant does pick up the KO though, with its close combat, as the Muck comes out but is immediately swapped out into the Hoopa, who opts for a Psychic, but the Psychic is not enough to KO. The Drain Punch is able to one-hit KO the Hoopa, as Wincon takes a Swords Dance, but opts to not stand due to being outspent by the Tingler, as Sneasler comes out and does a close combat onto the Fusien Samurai, yeah. Gasparotto, Iron Hands crucially dodging the Triple Axle, as Gasparotto does get the subsequent one. That miss probably not mattering that much, but yeah. Iron Valiant getting a good close combat off onto Muck. Wincon probably predicting a protect, switches out his Iron Valiant and goes to Keldeo. Keldeo getting the Secret Sword on Muck, as Gasparotto comes back in and gets those Triple Axles off on Gallade. One of them even critting. Iron Valiant using close combat, but it is able to 2-hit KO Tinglu, as Clean FFs knowing that the game is probably lost. Now, not entirely sure, but actually, there's a good chance that Gasparotto is choice banned here, even if I didn't think the damage looked like choice banned. But if it was choice banned, then yeah, absolutely, Gasparotto probably loses. But if it wasn't choice banned and it was choice Scarfire, then actually, nah, I'm not gonna say anything. Because I think that, regardless, I think he's probably expecting this Keldeo to have a vacuum wave, which it probably does, so I think that he just loses regardless. But yeah, Wincon able to win this game. But notice how the matchup is still scarier due to Hoopa's presence. Meanwhile, if he had Scrafty, this probably would have been a little bit easier, but Gallade wasn't that bad this matchup. It's still Gallade, after all, so it's able to do a lot. But yeah, let's move on to the last match, which is Masskeauuu versus Fusien. Fusien opting for a Dragonite Inaris team, with Masskeauuu opting for Fairy. Pretty standard Fairy team as well, no Pinkapon in sight. But yeah, if I had to guess, I think Fairy has the advantage here, due to Azumarill just shredding through a lot of Fusien spawns. The only issue is Dragonite. As Dragonite is, if the Dragonite is the fat set, it can completely shut down, or not really shut down, but it can stifle Azumarill's ability to sweep. As it can land a Thunder Wave and potentially just be a nuisance to it. So, yeah, Masskeauuu can't just risklessly click Belly Drum against this team. There needs to be some setup done. But who knows, Fusien may be able to do flying things against Masskeauuu here. Fusien immediately clicking knockoff turn 1 to remove Premier's choice specs. That turn actually, that was the knockoff actually saving his life there, as if he didn't remove those specs, his Glasscore does perish. Masskeauuu opting to use Hydro Pump against the Corviknight, but Corviknight able to take it very well. Corviknight opting to keep using Roost to try and wear down those Hydro Pump uses, but Masskeauuu acknowledges this and opts to go for Surf instead, but Fusien telling it, Masskeauuu, that he can't keep doing that, as the Roost is stopped by the Psychic Noise, well played by Masskeauuu. However, the Primarina may not be able to see another day, as the Tornadus does click the Liquid Storm and get the speed drop. The subsequent one, however, missing, but Primarina is still swapped out as a kind of as a defensive measure, as Klefki gets both screens off and Fusien knocks off the light play. But those boosted turns are still going to be used. Here comes the Iron Valiant with the Ice Punch, most likely going to have Thunderbolt as well, as the knockoff comes through and removes the Rocky Helmet from Skarmory. Alright, does not seem to have Thunderbolt, otherwise it would have maybe been clicked there, but Fluttermane does come in and is immediately swapped out, as Iron Valiant loses its Life Orb, losing quite a bit of power, but not enough to be useless this game, as the Ice Punch does come through. But Skarmory is able to take it very well. Gliscor coming out once again. And remember, Gliscor is faster than the Hatterene, so Hatterene is forced out, or not Hatterene, Primarina is forced out. Hatterene taking a crit Earthquake though, which is definitely not something it wanted. As the Iron Valiant comes out to force out the Gliscor. Ice Punch is once again used, and Masskeauuu swaps back into Primarina. Primarina probably going to get a KO here on the Skarmory. Yes, indeed it will, as the Surf knocks it out. Tornadus comes in. Primarina probably not able to come in on those rocks, so Masskeauuu probably opting to use Primarina as a sack to gain momentum. Yep, there we go. That's actually literally exactly what he wanted, as the taunt is revealed. And he's able to get a free turn for Iron Valiant to do its thing. As the Shadow Sneak does crit and gets the KO onto Tornadus, that is a very big pick to get, but unfortunately, the Enamorus is able to KO one of his backup sweepers, so Fluttermane is coming in as a response. Fluttermane opting for the Shadow Ball, that does lower the special defense of Gliscor, meaning that it cannot take a subsequent one. Even at 66% HP, it will still perish. So the Enamorus comes in to take the next Shadow Ball, as the Earth Power comes through on the side of Enamorus, proving that the Enamorus is Scarf. Fluttermane still opting to use Shadow Ball, as the Shadow Ball does not KO the Gliscor. Masskeauuu putting in Iron Valiant. As the Ice Punch still being used. Ice Punch is used again, and we know that it does not have Thunderbolt at all. Here comes the Dragonite. Dragonite uses Extreme Speed. Azumarill immediately put in instead of waiting for any sort of setup. Citrus Berry is used, and Play Rough is used. Klefki now comes in, as we're probably going to see a Reflect here. But how will Masskeauuu get Azumarill in safely? If it's not, he instead opts to just go straight in. Azumarill is slower than Gliscor though, so this may not end as well as we would like. We do see the 20%. Gliscor getting its attack lowered, but when Azumarill at 2% HP, we do not think that will matter that much. As Azumarill does go for the Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet not KOing, and that will be the end of this match for Masskeauuu. a very unfortunate fairy loss. As Fusion finishes off Masskeauuu with an Earthquake from the Glass Score. Very unfortunate fairy loss, for sure. The tools were definitely there, but fortunately Fusion was just able to maneuver his team well enough, and the Dragonite being choice banned, I think. It was choice banned, based on damage, but the Dragonite being choice banned significantly hurting Masskeauu's chances of doing a ton of work with the Azumarill, especially without the +4, or +6. Which, this is one of the reasons why I typically try to use a choice band Azumarill instead of a setup Azumarill, because setup Azumarill just gets put in these spots way too often where it just cannot find its opportunity, and then it just becomes borderline useless. But yeah, Fusion played this very well, so does deserve that victory, but Fairy was still a very big threat here, I believe. So yeah, that'll be it for this week's matches. Yeah, I'm still surprised that Fairy is seeing a lot more usage now. We've been seeing Fairy like every single week, I think since week 2 or 3. But yeah, Fairy's been a somewhat regular presence in these tournament matches, which I'm liking a lot, because I did say that Fairy was good. And Fairy has been doing very well. This is literally the one really brutal loss I think we have seen the type go through. That hasn't been against itself, of course. There have been other Fairy losses, but this is the first one that really felt like it was like... Actually, no, the other losses were kind of like around the same-ish, where Fairy did well, but the enemy type was just a bit too prepped to deal with it, because again, most of these types are prepped to somewhat handle Fairy accidentally. But yeah, more on that in the mid-season video. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say here besides a couple of channel announcements, but I don't really have any of those either. So I think we'll just leave it all for the mid-season video that should come out sometime this week. So be sure to look out for that, but until then, I will see you guys later. Take care.